Have you ever thought that maybe a sacred text isn't just a book of stories, but something more? Like a kind of cosmic engine? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating way of reading the Quran that sees it as exactly that, not some dusty old history book, but a dynamic map of reality itself.
Okay, so the very first thing you have to do with this approach is make a huge shift in your perspective. It asks us to stop seeing the Quran as this linear book that you just read from page one to the end. Instead, we're going to start thinking about it as a kind of cosmic map, or maybe even an operating manual for the universe. And this right here is the big question, isn't it? What if this text isn't just telling you about things that happened way back when, but is actually a tool, a kind of engine that's designed to be used in the here and now? A tool that helps you understand the deep patterns of existence itself. So, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this engine? Well, the source material gives us this incredible metaphor, the Mobius loop. You know that shape, right? The one with only one side? It's a perfect model because it suggests time isn't just a straight line. Instead, history, revelation, and even our own lives are all part of these repeating cycles, constantly spiraling forward in this amazing loop of return. All right, so if the Quran is an engine, how do we turn the key? The first major principle is to use what's called the Quranic lens. And all this really means is that you let the text interpret itself. You create this self-contained system for understanding, so you don't get lost in a million different conflicting opinions from the outside. Let's break this down into some practical steps. First, you start by grounding yourself in these big universal verses. They're like your anchor points. Second, and this one is so important, you let different parts of the Quran explain other parts, kind of like finding clues inside the map itself. Third, you look to the natural world as your guide, as a companion book. And finally, once you've got these tools, you'll start to see the patterns just pop out. This method gives you a really clear place to start. You could begin with a powerful verse about light, for instance, or one about the moment of creation. The whole point is to avoid getting bogged down in what you might call tafsir wars, all those conflicting external interpretations. Instead, you just let the verses shed light on each other. And all the while, you're looking at the world around you, the ants, the bees, the stars, and seeing them not as random, but as living examples of the exact same logic you're finding in the text.
And that brings us to the actual building blocks of this model. I mean, if the Quran is a map, it's got to have a legend, right? A key to all the symbols? Well, this methodology suggests that the text uses this incredibly consistent code, and it's built on just a few core elements.
And here it is. This is the core of that code. It's amazing, really. Just 4 fundamental elements make up this whole symbolic language. You've got water, which pretty much always represents mercy, a fresh start, new life. Fire, which symbolizes a test or maybe pride. Light is your guidance. It's revelation. And then there's clay, which represents us, our physical form, our earthly experience. Now here's the really crucial part. These are not just static symbols on a page. No way. They interact with each other in this constant dynamic system. Think about it. Adam, who was created from clay, is put to the test. Much later, humanity gets a total reset through the flood, a powerful symbol of water or mercy. You see, it's this continuous feedback loop of creation, trial, and then renewal. Okay, so we've got the code. Now, let's actually put it to use. This is where it gets really mind-blowing. When you start to see history as a loop, the stories of the prophets are no longer just these isolated events that happened a long time ago. Instead, they become these reoccurring patterns. Each one is like a different version of the same fundamental cosmic drama. And by looking for these patterns, you start to uncover one of the methodology's most profound ideas, a principle called the surgery of divine wisdom. It's this idea that what looks like a loss on the surface, maybe even a tragedy or a destructive act, is actually a precise, surgical move designed for a much, much greater gain in the long run. This slide illustrates that principle perfectly. On the left, you've got the story of Khidr, whose actions seem totally destructive. That's the theory. Damaging the boat actually saved it from being stolen. Then on the right, you see the life of Ibrahim as the practice. Leaving Ishmael in the desert looked like a devastating loss, but it preserved a prophetic line. You see it? The pattern just keeps repeating. So, we've looked at the cosmic map. We've seen the repeating patterns. But The whole point of this isn't just to be some academic exercise. It's about taking this grand, sweeping theory and bringing it all the way back down to us, to the individual, and turning it into a truly personal journey. Because when you start to read the text this way, it completely transforms. It stops being just a collection of stories about the past. It becomes a living, breathing manual, a personal guide for your own spiritual journey. The patterns aren't just about ancient prophets anymore. They're about you, right here, right now, living out your own loop of remembrance and return.
And that really gets to the heart of it all. This is the central thesis. The goal isn't just to analyze a book, it's to internalize these patterns so deeply that your own life becomes a reflection of its principles, a conscious, active part of that great cosmic loop of return.
So, I'll just leave you with this one final thought to chew on. If this whole framework is right, if we're all living inside some kind of loop, repeating certain patterns over and over again, then it's probably worth asking yourself, what pattern am I in? What cycle am I repeating?